this is,
Speak a little bit louder.
okay. So my name is Wendy Lucas, and I want to introduce also the tribal chair of titʼ u, Northern Chumash tribe of San Luis Obispo County and region. And so we were asked to come today to speak about our tribe and different things that we have been doing and a little bit of the history of our tribe. So I'm going to start off with a traditional greeting in our language. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm wondering, maybe could you guys move more center and then, yeah, and I won't get hoarse. Thank you. And thank you all for being here. It sounds like the extra effort was made to find your way.
I'm okay.
You're okay? Okay.
I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
You're
Perfect.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, titʼ u, titʼ katla, wasapatu, wachi'iwi, napahomu, napapatu, wa eloehe, and wa titʼ. So in our tradition, when we introduce ourselves, we not only say our name, but we also say where we come from and that we come in a good way. So I said that Mona and I, we are cousins, and we come from the village site of Sapatu, which is the place of the whales and known today as Avila Beach. We also come from Chi'iwi, which is a village that is south of the Diablo Canyon power plant, right on the coast. And then I mentioned other villages throughout our region, Napumu, which you can figure out as Napomo, and Eloehe, which is up in Paso Robles area, Titʻu, which is Morro Bay, and our tribal members come from villages throughout the county. And to say that we do come in a good way, we are not standing alone. We have our ancestors with us as we do these kinds of things. So, and I speak the language of the people of San Luis Obispo, the people of the full moon. So, just want to hand it over now to Mona.
I was wondering if anybody would like any help in pronouncing the name of our tribe.
Yes.
Okay, because when you look at it, because of the markings, special markings that we use, those are really to help us with pronunciation. It throws everybody for a loop, and it did me the first time too. So did you want to go through that?
Sure. So this could be a language lesson, so you have to join in, okay? So yak, so our tribal name, I'll say it first, and then I'll break it down. So titʼ tiłhini, okay? So, and we go by short YTT. So if you ever see YTT Northern Chumash, that's us. And so it.
Does that count all the villages that you talked about?
Yes, it's inclusive of San Luis Obispo County and region.
Oh, okay.
Okay. It's just we know because of the documented information, we know specifically which villages we come from, which is really, really wonderful. So yak means the. So can you say yak?
Yeah.
Yak.
And then titʼ, just like I'm teaching you this part. So titʼ, and titʼ means person. So if you repeat it and say titʼu, it means people. So yak titʼu,
Yak, titʼu.
and then back to yak again.
Yak.
So that's the people of the, and then tiłhini is San Luis Obispo. It's also the name of our language. And it's very close to tahini, you know, the sesame seed, but there's an L in it and you kind of flip it. You go tiłhini.
Very good, very good.
Very good. Yeah.
Mhm.
So put it all together. I'll say it slow. Yak, titʼ, yak, tiłhini. Beautiful.
Northern Chumash tribe, San Luis Obispo County and region.
Yeah, you gotta throw that in. So you can say our name. That's wonderful. Good job.
Yeah, so you can just,
Question. You know the Cal Poly dorms that have the names?
Mhm.
What are the name, what do the names signify?
So our tribe worked with Cal Poly on that project for several years, and those are village sites. So I actually named a few of them, like Zapatu, Avila Beach, Eloehe, the Paso Robles area, Tit់Morro Bay. The dorms are set up geographically as they are within the county. So if you looked at them, you'll see that, Eloehe, the Paso Robles one, is more in the northeast. And so it's very cool. And if you have not been there, I would encourage you to go and walk around the campus. It's beautifully done work. They have native plants, very thoughtfully and specifically planted throughout that area. And then you can actually see the language written. And there was fear when this was first being done. It's like, some of these names are difficult to pronounce. And it's like, these kids got into Cal Poly, they can learn how to pronounce it. And so they do. That's really cool. And it's very cool for the land to be hearing the language again as well. So.
any other questions on that? Okay. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our old history, which dates back,
Oh,
roughly-
maybe, I'm sorry, the video.
We're going to show you a video.
He's got a thumbs up. Okay.
This will tell you a little bit about us too.
We are tit់u yak tiłhini. In our language,
our name means
the people of the full moon.
Our families have lived in this one region
for more than 10,000 years.
and this is our ancestral homeland.
The place where our story began.
Tit៍Misasaksi, tit់titʼ tit៍katla, tiłhini, wasapatu, wachi'iwi, wachanu, wapapatsu. Hello, my friends. When we meet someone and introduce ourselves, we say that we come from good people, that we are not standing alone, and we also identify the location from where we come. In our native language, tiłhini, this says that I come from good people and also from the village of Zapatu, now known as Avila Beach, as well as from other villages on the Petro coast. Our tribal members come from many villages throughout this region. Wamitana yakitanasmu, Talinka titʼ u. And I speak the language of titʼ u yak tiłhini, the people of San Luis Obispo. Tit៍mistu sumokini. We have faith in it, always.
We love our homeland.
And we want you to love it too. Because when you fall in love with something,
You will do everything you can to care for and protect it.
This land
and the future of this land is our shared legacy.
A legacy that lives within us all
And is passed from one generation to the next.
And
and
the
the
next.
next.
titİu, titİu, yaktini.
The people of the full moon.
There was some redundancy with what I said earlier, but maybe that helped it think a little deeper too.
So moving on, I wanted to tell you a little bit about our old history, which dates back to this one region for thousands of years, easily 10, and in some places up to perhaps 15,000 years. And we're able to say that our homeland, generally speaking, is what we now know as San Luis Obispo County. Not that San Luis Obispo County existed in that time, but San Luis Obispo County is geographically formed or geographically identified. The Santa Maria River and the ocean and the Carrizo and Ragged Point. So it just worked out that way, although we didn't have boundaries that went in straight lines like the line today between San Luis Obispo and Monterey. It's in that area. So we lived here for all of these years, and we were not a nomadic tribe. You know, we had established village sites, and these villages were comprised of various families and individuals, and we were really quite ingenious. We were able to live in a way that kept us in one place. We had the ability to stay in one place, and we had the ability of governance, spirituality, we had currency, we had trade routes, we had engineering capacity, and certainly artistic capacity. And we know that today by the things that have been left behind and that are found here in our area and really throughout the United States and other places, the ability that we had and to manufacture tools, incredible things, you know, that I've seen and that you would see in museums that required a huge capacity for thinking a problem through. And a basket is a good example. And I know you've all seen Native American baskets. If you'd like to come in and sit down. Okay. If you've ever seen a Native American basket, you have typically a cylindrical form of material made out of typically a variety of grasses. And that this is perfectly formed. And not only that, these baskets oftentimes tell a story, and the designs of these baskets that are on these baskets are just incredible. And they're just beautifully placed, and they're not sloppy and all over the place and lopsided. They are incredible, and it takes a lot of math to make a basket. And some baskets are giant in size, just huge. And if you're interested in seeing the largest Chumash basket that we're aware of, it's at the Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History on display there, and only found recently within the last 10 years. So it's quite a basket, and it has a design of butterflies on it. So we had villages. Yes, ma'am.
Where was it found?
It was found in the Los Padres. It was found in a cave.
In a cave?
In a cave, yes, up on a ledge. So it had been protected from the elements, and the temperature was controlled just because it was in a cave. So it's remarkably, it's not pristine, but nearly. I'd recommend you drive down and take a look at it. And so we lived in these villages throughout San Luis Obispo County, and there was Native people all over California and the United States. And we had so much abundance available to us. And a lot of our villages were on the coast, but also inland. But if you can imagine, you have the entire bounty of the ocean, and then you have all of the hills where there was a lot of animals, and oaks were very important to us because of acorns and other reasons. And we just had a wonderful life. I won't say easy, but when one people can stay pretty much in one place for thousands of years, you know, they've got it figured out. That was totally disrupted, terribly, horrifyingly disrupted in the 1700s with the missionaries from Spain that came through California. And they were sent here by their government. Part of it was to build missions, but they were really trying to get as far north as they could to claim as much of California, because Russia was coming this way. So this was a political endeavor, not just a religious endeavor, because the missions are sort of set up, I'll say, like way stations, so that travelers and soldiers and different people, they have a place to stay and get food and things like that. But when the missionaries came, they brought some really terrible diseases with them and didn't give anybody any warning or any help or any consideration. And these diseases, it was a near genocide event because we had no immunity to European diseases. And what's terrible about this, and it's my theory that with the introduction of these diseases, in some cases, we know it was intentional in different parts of America. I don't know for sure if it was intentional here, but the first people to die are the babies and the young people, then the older people who might not have as much strength. So that leaves the people in the middle who are stronger, and that they could then be enslaved and treated in terrible ways to build the missions and be maids and cooks and servants and farmers and take care of livestock. So our life as we knew it for thousands of years, it came to this nearly total annihilation. But it was a design of the California government, to wipe out native population, but fortunately they didn't succeed. And then after the missions failed, and they didn't really last a long time, but they did fail, and the Mexican government came in to claim, this part of California. So when that happened, they created large ranchos. I know you've all heard of the ranchos here in California, but that created the concept of private property. So Native people, even though the missions had failed at that time, many had no place to go because what had been their home was no longer their home. It was private property with fences and people with guns and horses, which is one of the reasons the missions were so successful, because they came with soldiers, guns, and horses. And then tribes were displaced all over. Tribes might be moved from maybe not even San Luis Obispo, but brought to San Luis Obispo to help build missions. It's a story that's often told. And so then I'll call it the government of California, if you will, came into play. And I'm going through a timeline here of hundreds of years. And the Californians were like the Spanish and like the Mexican government. They're really after resources. These are what we call European colonizers. And the purpose of a colonizer is to come and take resources. They don't go to places where there's no water or soil, good soil, things like that. They come to take. And the thing that is in the way typically of taking those resources are the indigenous people. So they have a system of killing them, discrediting them, incarcerating them, all of those. That's part of the colonizing playbook. And, you can look this up easily and find volumes and volumes and volumes on it. And even to the point that the first governor of California placed a bounty on the head of Native people because they were Native people, because they'd committed any crime. And there were several laws that came into place, and one of them had this name, I don't remember the entire name, but it also said, and the protection of Indians. And in that law, there were so many aspects to it that were so horrible for Native people, including if I witnessed a crime that a white person had committed, that it was illegal for me to testify about that. So if I saw, some terrible crime firsthand, or 10 of us saw some terrible crime firsthand, it was against the law for us to testify. Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me again, but yeah, but same thing with, it was written in the law with Black people couldn't testify against a white person, but I was reading on gold mining years ago, 49ers and all that. And if ever a horse was missing, they'd go find an Indian to kill, to hang. They didn't care if it was, it was obviously a white person who stole the horse, but they didn't care. They just go find any Indian and hang him.
That's true. That's all true. They wanted land, you know, Europeans wanted land, they wanted water, they wanted wood, they wanted timber, they wanted gold, they wanted everything they could, and they didn't want to be bothered, you know, with the people who'd been there for 10,000 years or more, much more in some cases. And then the US government came along, California became a state, and the United States didn't do a better job. They just didn't do a very good job at all. And California tribes have had some of the worst laws enacted against them in the whole United States. California has done among the worst job ever of dealing with its native people, to the point where 18 treaties were written and were accepted, then hidden. This is all in history. They were hidden from view. They were never signed. They were never ratified, because that would have given us a claim of some sorts to our own homeland. And speaking of the Northern California during the gold rush, it was just a Native American slaughter. Because if your village was near a creek or a river or some place where gold may have been abundant and you're in the way, well, the idea of becoming rich overnight by discovering gold, but these people were in the way, well, you get rid of them. So it's a terrible story. It's a true story, and that is our history. So we have continuing trauma that I think that we now are just born with, of colonizers. And colonization, by the way, continues. It continues right here on the Central Coast. Now, you know, they can't bash us in the head and get paid for it like they, you know, did many years ago, but there's a different system in place now that takes, you know, continues to take from Native people. But there are a lot of things that have come about that it's not all terrible things. We had wonderful ancestors who left us incredible information and beautiful things, and we love them dearly for that. And one of the things that was left to us by my great-grandmother and her great-aunt, whose name is Rosario Cooper, is language, which in the language, she'll tell you more about that, but it's stories. It's not just words. So I'd like to hand it back over to Wendy.
Yeah, I wanted to just circle back for just 1 minute when talking about the tools that we made. And I mean, there's just magnificent histories when you start looking deeper into it. Like the baskets, when they needed a waterproof basket, tar, the naturally seeping tar, they would use, and they would make a round stone, or, you know, wear a stone into a round shape, heat it up, put the tar in the basket, put this hot stone in the basket, and then roll it around, and they'd create a waterproof basket. I mean, things like that. I just loved hearing these stories, because the tar, you know, would coat the inside. And then the other thing is, you know, about the missions, you know, the incredible, horrible stories. But the one good thing is that they were amazing documenters. And that's why we have the information about what village site we are from, because they would record births and deaths and baptisms and villages. And, you know, so that is a tremendous resource that we have. So, and then the thing when we speak to groups too, is because we all come from indigenous roots. We all have, if you go far back enough in history, we all have folks who colonized our relatives at one point. All of us do. And it's just to the courage and resilience of our ancestors is why we are all here, all of us. And it's an amazing thing to behold and to consider. And it's something I think we need to all continue to hold, because if it wasn't for them and what they lived through and stood up to, we wouldn't be here. So Rosario Cooper, well, more than 100 years ago in 1912, 1914, the Smithsonian Institution had a fellow John P. Harrington, who was working for them, or else they contracted. I'm not sure about which, but he was doing a lot of research on the California Indians and trying to record as much information as possible, as far as their language and stories and all that. So he worked with Rosario, a relative, and recorded her on wax cylinder and recorded songs and did copious notes in English and in German and phonetically and you know what she was describing as far as the language. And so he recorded on things like slip notes and pieces of paper, and they have like 10,000 of these notes that are housed at the Smithsonian now. But there are also things that we can work with that are held up at Berkeley. And every other year, there's a language week at Berkeley. And then the off year of that, it's held at the Smithsonian. So the one at Berkeley that you apply to, and you can work with their archival information and work with a linguist. And then the one that the Smithsonian is for tribes all across the United States, whereas Berkeley is only the California tribes, where you can actually come in contact with these works. And that's where we're learning more and more about our language and our songs, and we're bringing them all back. And so if it wasn't for Rosario, we wouldn't have this. So, I mean, that's the difference of what one person makes. And then the gratitude for John P. Harrington for taking the time to do all this. But apparently there are boxes and boxes that people have not been able he didn't organize things very well. So they're still trying to figure out his system.
And you might be interested to know that Rosario lived in Lopez Canyon, which is now Lopez Lake, but long before the lake was there. And that was the last place that she lived, and that's the place that John P. Harrington sought her out. And her home was modest, that's being, it was, what's less than modest? I don't know, but it was a very small little house, and I sat at her kitchen table, and she was in the later years of her life, but she was determined. And she was bilingual. She actually spoke 3 languages. She spoke English, Spanish, and Tiłhini. So she's a very, very bright woman, and we're very grateful to her. Yes.
It looks like we might have a hand up on the Zoom. Someone might have a question.
Okay,
Yeah.
we can't see it, but go ahead, Chris.
Okay, I'm gonna unmute. Hold on one second.
Thank you.
Yes, I was wondering if there are any recordings of Rosario that are available for the public to hear.
There may be.
Well-
You have to search out the Smithsonian archives, because she did record on wax cylinders. But I have some recorded, actually mine are on cassette.
If you go down to the Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History, they have a room that's dedicated to Chumash, and there are various artifacts and a lot of information. But as soon as you walk into the room and you turn right, there's a button you push and you can actually hear her singing. And it's just like the first time I heard it, I just burst into tears. You know, it's all scratchy because it's a wax recording, but to actually be able to hear her voice is just amazing. So thank you for that question.
Were there any other questions, Chris?
I'd say
No
maybe
other
it's
questions, but it's I am a little late with my time check, so it's 12:07, so we got about like 23 minutes or so.
Okay, we wanted to save more time for any more questions as well.
Did you say there's a question in chat?
It looks like there's some questions in the chat, Chris. I don't know if you can bring those up on your end.
There's no questions in the chat that I see.
I see that there's 10 notifications, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I don't see anything in the chat. There's comments from earlier.
And we're gonna check the chat on our end.
Okay. The last one I see is from Marisol. That's the last one I see.
Yeah, we just hadn't opened it up, sorry.
No worries.
This is interactive, right?
And help from the audience.
I know, I've been on the other end of that, so I just wanted to make sure everyone got
We
it.
appreciate your
I
help.
appreciate you. Yeah, thank you.
This is so strange, talking to somebody behind you and you can't see anything.
I think we're good.
Are we good?
Mhm.
So you said about 20 minutes? Chris?
Yeah, sorry, I had to unmute myself. Yeah, we have about like 22, 21 minutes right now. And we do
Okay.
have one more question. I'm sorry. Is it okay to?
Sure.
Okay. Go ahead with your question.
Thank you. I just wanted to know, what is the current population size of the northern Chumash?
You know, we don't know. We know our family, we know our membership, but there could be other Northern Chumash people out there that we don't know yet or know about. And it could be that some of their history has been lost in their family and would require some research. So I don't have an answer. Yes.
Are you familiar with the long dance that they do in Santa Margarita? Who leads that?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, I've gone for the last 2 years.
Oh, very nice.
And it's wonderful. They put teepees up, they have,
When did they have it?
ceremonies. I think it's in fall, September, I think.
So someday we may know more Northern Chumash people. And we didn't live in teepees. We lived in what you would call a hut, but we call a kanipu, and that's made from willow and tule. So it's a different concept completely than a teepee.
Did they trade with the Tule Indians to get some of that too?
Well, I think
they traded shells and things.
we definitely had trade routes, but there's a lot of tule here. So we probably didn't trade for that because there's an abundance of tule. And there's a whole lot more then than there is now. And there's a lot right now. Oh.
When I was just thinking back to some of the history stuff too, because it's always so interesting that California became a state in 1850 and the gold rush started right around the same time. And then all the laws that were enacted to help facilitate all the extraction stuff. And I mean, and that's the other thing too, been in discussions with people and because it's a tough history to talk about, you know, and then everybody's got their history stories, but it's not about blame at this time. You know, it's about talking truth to what happened and educating people. And so that we can move forward together, because there's been so much either denial or omission about the truth or flat out lies about it. And it's like, we've got to keep educating people, because if we're going to heal together, we've got to move together. And so we've got to talk about what happened. And so thank goodness there's different things like ethnic studies and the different stuff I read recently that they're bringing it into the high school, that they can, maybe our kids can handle this stuff, you know, give them the chance to handle the truth, and they can do it and make some good decisions moving forward. But so anyway, it's my little.
Well, as I said earlier, colonization hasn't stopped. It just has a different look to it now. So if we can look back in time and learn some lessons and apply them to today, then maybe that would be beneficial to us all. But, you know, time marches on. And one of the things that we're trying to do now is to recover our land at Diablo. And if I'm referring to the titʼ coast where the power plant sits. And it is owned primarily by PG&E, but that's all our land that was taken from us without compensation, consideration. You know, there was no agreement for that. And so we've been trying now since 2016, when Diablo announced its decommissioning, to try to recover that land. But then, as you all know, then the decommissioning flipped to relicensing, but the land may still be considered excess by PG&E. It's owned privately. It's a private company. And so we've been engaged for several years now in an attempt to have that land returned to us. And it's not that they're gonna give it to us. They haven't, nobody suggested that at all. And so we keep working. So we've been at this strenuously since 2016, but we've wanted our land back, for 250 years. And so, sometimes we have days where things are looking good and other days when things don't look so good. And so it's kind of been moving like this as far as, are we going to get land back or some of the land back? We still don't know. Yes, ma'am.
That's what I was gonna ask, is are there any efforts to reclaim your land? I'm glad to hear it.
That's our big effort. That's originally we were seeking out 12,000 acres, but a section of it, the state did want for a state park. And so it's what we're after now is a smaller amount, but still large and still beautiful. And the irony of the power plant is because of the power plant that a large, approximately 12,000 acres is nearly pristine, not in all places. So that's there. It should be returned to us. So we're trying really hard to do that. And we do a lot of fun things too. If there are some singers that came into town yesterday, they're going to be performing tonight at Cal Poly. And we did an official greeting yesterday, and we'll do another greeting tonight. And then maybe a couple of months ago, Polynesian paddlers came into Morro Bay, and they on the boat, the Okulea, and we did an official greeting for them, and it's fun. So it's not all doom and gloom. Some days might feel like that, but it's not. And and we have get-togethers, and we have one family that does public presentation at the North Beach Campground in Pismo Beach every year, and another family who did public outreach presentations at Lopez. They haven't restarted since pandemic, but we like to engage with the community, and we like to visit our friends. And for me, as the tribal chair, there's a lot of work to do. We all have a lot of work to do. I don't do it all myself, but it's been wonderful to become reacquainted with family, and in some cases family that I didn't know, distant cousins, and people leave because of marriage or work or a variety of things. So there's been a lot of fun that goes. And then this is for us, this is fun, so long as somebody's here that can help us with the technology part. And then, I don't know, a couple of months ago, I spoke with some third graders at Sensheimer, and they were doing presentations for me. And oh my gosh, the level of enthusiasm and the effort that they put into their presentations, I loved every second of it. So when somebody asks us to come and talk, we try to say yes, and we try not to say no. So, okay, is there questions?
Do you have any land?
No,
No.
no, our tribe doesn't have any land, and we're not a federally recognized tribe, so we don't have any sort of a reservation situation at all. And
You're not federally recognized?
no, we're not. Most tribes, and there's only one tribe in between, I think, Monterey, San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, Ventura. There's only one tribe that is federally recognized. They're in Santa Ynez, and but it's a separate tribe. It's not, even though they may have Chumash in their name, which is really just a big error in the first place, that all of us would be called Chumash. So they have their own tribe, their own business holdings, their own activities, but that's not shared among other Chumash tribes.
Yeah, when I just, it's a quick example, when I was up for the language thing at Berkeley, it was 2018, and there were 96 other California tribes that were at the same week-long conference, workshop, working on their languages.
Mhm.
So
Can you speak a little bit more about the error of having Chumash and multiple tribe names? Will you speak more about that?
Sure. In the late 1800s, there were some linguists who were trying to give our languages a language group. I believe that's what it's called. And there was a small tribe on the Channel Islands who did have a name similar to Chumash. And so in their infinite wisdom, they decided that everybody from Ventura to Ragged Point would all be a part of this Chumash language group. And the languages were not the same, quite different, especially the northern Chumash language is called Proto-Chumash because it's the oldest language. Then along came a fellow, an ethnographer, who wrote a book about California Indians, and this language group, this linguist had called us Chumashian, and then he changed it to Chumash, and so then the records started to be built around everybody being Chumash, and it's nothing could be further from the truth. So the word Chumash itself, unless you're from that small group on the islands, you had another name. You know, you were called something else. We were tiłhini. And then through time, because of the mission, some academics call us Obispo because a lot of people got affiliated with the mission that was nearby. And we're also called Northern Chumash. So, but our name is tiłhini. If you want to identify us, we're tiłhini.
And
So-
talking, oh, sorry.
So that's not bad.
Thank you for sharing that. I picked up on when you mentioned that was an error.
It is,
If
yeah.
you could elaborate
That
on
was
that.
good listening.
I can hear it.
Well, and also in talking with one of the linguists one time, I said, well, because there's 8 distinct languages from Ventura up to Ragged Point. And I said, are these dialects? And it's no, they're distinct languages. They're different. So we traded, very
Mhm.
successful. And if you look at, the 101 with the mission bells and stuff, the King's Highway, the Camino Real, that was actually Indian trade routes. That was, so that kind of got taken over as well and identified differently. So,
The land that they're doing the ceremonies on, that has been given back to them.
you're talking about Santa Margarita?
Yes, Santa Margarita. And so they own the land, so they're trying to do, a bathhouse and different things. They're in the process of trying to, raise funds and things.
Hmm.
To
Yeah, I'm
build
not-
a bathhouse and to
Do you mean a sweat lodge?
yeah, they have a sweat lodge that they bought from them.
Mhm.
Yes. It wasn't given back to them. Well, I thought it was donated. That's how they got it. But the government didn't give it. No, the government did. They paid for it. I mean, a person did,
Mhm.
donated it back.
Yeah, I'm not familiar at all.
Mm-mm.
Do you live in this area?
I live in San Luis.
I was born in San Luis, but I've lived in San Luis Obispo. I've lived in southern part of the county my entire life. So I grew up in Oceano, and then with my husband and I now live in Arroyo Grande. So yeah, we're from here. My family's never lived anywhere else. It's a privilege that I didn't even understand or recognize until I was much older. So yeah.
Question. You mentioned that there were like 90-something tribes at the language event that you went at Berkeley, but only one has been recognized in California.
Oh,
Or in this area, I think, right?
well, there were that many California tribes, but there was no distinguishing if you were federally recognized or not. So, but the majority of tribes in California are not federally recognized. We have state acknowledgement. So we're all,
And is there an effort to recognize like from the federal government or like whatever? Can you tell us a little bit more about it? Is there interest?
We're very interested in it, but it's almost impossible. The federal government doesn't want more federally recognized tribes because then they have some obligation to them. And so why would they want us to become federally recognized? Now, this is the cynic in me coming out, but I think it's the truth because the pathway to federal recognition, the typical pathway is through the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And it's a journey of 1 million steps to get through the process and actually millions of dollars. So it's almost out of reach completely for most tribes. It's not that we're not interested. We have filed our letter of intent, but that's the first step in thousands of steps. So it will be difficult. It wouldn't happen in my lifetime, I'm sure, but someday.
And we know of tribes who have tried for 20, 30 years and they keep getting either denied or, stuff returned to them. And what's really, it's not a level playing field, federally recognized tribes and non, because when anything comes up, the federally recognized tribe gets a seat at the table and we don't, even if it's our area.
So what's the reluctance?
Pardon me?
What's the reluctance on the part of the government?
Well, you think of all the different treaties that were created trying to, in good faith, in maybe some of the folks who were doing it, but they were never ratified, and there were promises made, because if we take you off your land, we will make sure that you are in a place that you can grow your own food. And then you look at where these reservations are, it's all over the United States. It's horrid. And we will make sure you have health care. There's those kinds of things, but they also get funding for different projects where we are not allowed to look for that kind of funding.
Yeah, we're unfunded. Non-federally recognized tribes are unfunded. Most of what we do, a lot of what we've done, it just comes from our own checkbook, unless we're able to get a grant, and we're getting a little better at that.
When they list government assistance programs, they list one for native tribes or something like that. There's one Indian, one, whatever it says. I can't remember what I was put. You know what I'm talking about? No? Anyway, it's one assistance program that you wouldn't qualify for. I think if it's for children. If you're 1/18th or something, you can prove that you're 1/18th, I think, native, that your children get special programs or extra money.
I don't know what it is. It doesn't apply to us. Was your question?
Yes. So just about, the nationally recognized tribes, and when something comes up, they have a seat at the table, they can go in and speak and be a part of decisions that are made.
Right.
So my question is for those tribes that are not nationally recognized, do you have an alliance with those tribes so that your voice can be carried forward in that kind of environment?
Sometimes, but only to a certain degree. It varies greatly. Offshore wind is one of the examples. Since it's federal, we're like second and third tier in that range, with a federally recognized tribe being at the very top. So they're going to be they're going to set I'll call it tribal policy. And so in that case, we might agree with what their thoughts are, and in this case, we don't agree. And so it's very hard for us to have a strong position in any kind of policy.
Yeah, and I appreciate that cynical position that was taken, but also thinking in the bigger picture about your voice being carried forward through this vessel, if you will, of the nationally recognized. But I also understand, oftentimes agendas are different. And so if your agenda is in line with those organizations, tribes that have that national recognition, it will be carried forward. It's a win-win, but when it's not, if there's some way in which your tribes can have a voice at the table,
a collective voice
that are then going to be spokespeople, if you will.
And sometimes that works.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah, but it is frustrating because this is our homeland. We are the documented descendants. So it's more than frustrating. It's heartbreaking at times.
And I want to say one thing more, and I'm sure there may be other questions, is that we're in support of the marine sanctuary 100% and have been for decades, really going back a long ways. And we're not in support of fragmentation of the marine sanctuary. Whole other story, could take up a lot of your time. So I just wanted to say that we're not in favor of the fragmentation of the marine sanctuary.
Real quick, so sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to let you all know we're about like 2 minutes or so from the close of the session, which I think we can continue to take questions and answers as long as y'all would like, and our presenters are if they're able to stay. But I do want to just let you all know too that lunch is apparently on campus, and so I wanted to make that announcement as well.
Thank you, Chris.
If we're interested in connecting and supporting, do you have a website? Do you invite people to?
Yes, we'd love for you to look at our website. We've had some help in, because we had a real basic framework for a website, and then a media group offered to help us. And they just made it beautiful, and you'll see some videos on it now. Watch this 3-minute video was from a grant that we wrote, that paid for that. And there's other videos on there that are just really well done. So if you go to YTT Northern Chumash.com, and just be careful. Just be careful.
Sorry, there's one more question too, just when you're wrapping up that point, we have one question on Zoom.
Okay, just be very careful because it might put you to Northern Chumash Tribal Council, which is not us. They're a nonprofit group. They're not, there's so much confusion with that. You have to look for the YTT part, because I checked it the other day and it linked to their website, and they're a very well-funded group, but they're not us, okay?
Sorry, could we repeat the?
YTT Northern Chumash.com. Yeah, that'll work too, I think. I think.
Just so you all know, I am monitoring the chat, so I'm responding directly to folks as they're chatting.
Was there a question in chat?
No question. We do have a question from someone that was going to raise their hand, and so feel free to ask your question. I was just letting folks know that I'm monitoring the chat in case there were concerns about the notifications on that side. But go ahead with your question.
Well, I just was hoping that they could repeat the name of their nation one more time so that we don't forget it.
Okay, so the name of our tribe is titʼ tiłhini, Northern Chumash Tribe, San Luis Obispo County and Region.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure we got the pronunciation correct.
If you want to find more information, just go to the site that Wendy mentioned, YTT-northernchumash.com. Northern Chumash Tribe.
Either way, it'll work. And you'll see, it's really interesting. Yes, it's really interesting because you'll see high Ys, and those are how, phonetically that's it. Perfect. Do we follow the IPA pronunciation stuff, guide, whatever? So you'll see high Y, you'll see like a L in tiłhini that's got a bar in it this way. You'll see different things like that. But now you know how to say the name, so.
Thank you. I've always shied away.
Oh, no. Please say our name.
You just say it?
Yeah. Thank you.
Any
So,
other questions from anybody? The people in the atmosphere?
I think we're good in the ether. Yeah.
The full name of the tribe again is tiłhini, Northern Chumash Tribe, and then what?
San Luis Obispo County and Region,
Okay.
but you can shorten it all to YTT, Northern Chumash, and that makes it.
and you said it beautifully.
Yeah.
I'm so impressed. Yay.
Yeah.
That's from going to Cal Poly and listening to them every time.
It's true. No, it's your teaching is very good.
If you go to the Cal Poly housing website, they have the names of the dorms and pronunciation and a little explanation. So it's kind of a cool site.
But we also have that video on our website. So you'll be able to find all that stuff. There's a lot of information. There's a 20-minute video that talks about all the different things having to do more with our language and our ocean involvement and all kinds of stuff. Plus you'll see more tribal members. You guys have been great. Thank you so much.
I will say, I've been to your grandmother's place before they put in all that space.
About
when they had.
Wow.
Before they built the lake, the lake in the sixties. Yeah,
Wow, yeah.
amazing.
You're getting thank yous from the chat as well, folks online.
Hey, so I wanted to thank you. I'm Vicky Pro.
Vicky works with us.
Yeah, I'm with University College and as a program director for the BIPOC Board Leadership Training.